Fertilization. With so many different choices and so many different brands, how can you know what's best for you? And how can you know if you're doing it right? Are you over-fertilizing? Are you not fertilizing enough? After this video, you'll know. Because I'll share the 4-step fertilization method that I use in my own tanks and help you figure out your own. Step 1. Understanding what your plants require. We know that lighting and CO2 are essential, but that's not all. Aquatic plants need other nutrients to thrive. These are what we call macro and micronutrients, indicating that some of them are needed in larger amounts than others. Macronutrients consist of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Your aquarium is going to need a lot of those. In a heavily planted aquarium, this is what you're looking for. Potassium, 20 to 30 ppm. Nitrogen, 15 to 20 ppm. And phosphorus, 2 to 6 ppm. Then we got micronutrients, which are iron, cobalt, copper, manganese, and many more. Those are needed in very small amounts. Don't be discouraged because of all these weird numbers. For this fertilization method, you won't need to remember those or even measure them. But it's important that you understand what your plants need and what they need the most. Step 2. Choose a fertilizer brand that matches your needs. By now you know that other than CO2, the most important nutrient in your tank is potassium. But there's another reason why it's the most important. And that's because out of all the other macronutrients, it's the only one that is not produced by your ecosystem. What do I mean by this? Well, nitrogen and phosphorus are produced by organic wasting materials, like fish food or fish waste, or even melting plants. And that's why not all fertilizer brands will match your specific needs. For example, if you have a lot of fish in your tank, there's no point in getting a fertilizer brand that only sells macronutrients all together in one bottle, because you can't control how much of each you are adding to the aquarium. In a tank with lots of fish and lots of plants, nitrogen levels are going to be pretty high. If you keep adding more, well, that's a recipe for algae. You're also going to find fertilizers that are meant to be used in very specific conditions. Some are really lean and require you to have a good quality substrate, which will supply most of the nutrition. So, before you decide what fertilizer brand to use, ask yourself these questions. Do I have a lot of fish? Do I want a heavily planted aquarium or just a few plants here and there? Do I have a low-tech or a high-tech aquarium? Do I want to use an active substrate? You will need to know the answer to those questions if you want to be able to keep any plant. I hope you guys are enjoying this video. If you are, you might like other videos in the channel. So remember to like and subscribe for more weekly content just like this. Step 3. Learn to identify deficiencies. If you want to keep more demanding plants, rather than blindly following the instructions on the bottle, learn to identify deficiencies. It is not that complicated. Most deficiencies will come from macronutrients. If the stem plants are growing thin and brown, or you start to see holes in the leaves, you most likely have a potassium deficiency. If you have a good light, but you're still getting pale colors, chances are the aquarium needs more nitrogen. And lastly, phosphorus. Pay close attention to mosses. Brown moss is a clear indication of a phosphorus deficiency. But don't take my word for it. If you want to do this right, make sure your CO2 levels are good, and then start removing nutrients from your fertilizing routine. Start with nitrogen. Stop dosing for a couple of weeks and see how your plants do. Then do the same with phosphorus and potassium. Do not remove two of them at the same time. The whole point is for you to notice what a lack of any of these do to your plants. And who knows, you might be able to remove some of them forever. I personally haven't dosed nitrogen in years. Step 4. Your fertilization strategy. By this point, you know what your plants need. You know your specific conditions. And you've learned to identify deficiencies. It's time to come up with your own fertilization strategy. First, you want to find a brand that lets you control what you're dosing. So try to avoid all-in-one fertilizers. Next, it's time for you to decide what your tank needs. Out of the box, I can almost guarantee that you don't need nitrogen. You can start with that. Try starting with potassium and trace elements only. And then eventually add some phosphorus here and there if you notice a need for it. I was dosing this tank with only potassium for about 3 weeks before I started to notice a little bit of brown in the whippy moss. So I added a little bit of phosphorus, and I continue to do that every other week. If you use this method, you'll end up saving a lot of money, and you'll acquire some real knowledge. Instead of blindly adding a bunch of stuff to your tank, you'll know why to do it and when to do it. That was my 4-step fertilization method. I hope this method works for you. It has helped me achieve amazing results, and I'm sure it can do the same for you.